Dream in motion. No, the World Cup has just begun and Mexico has just won against none other than South Africa in their World Cup debut in the very first opening match of this World Cup. In a World Cup that is very unique because it's an edition with 48 teams, an edition that will be played in 3 host countries. Not even 2, like it was in 2002 with Korea and Japan, but the United States, Mexico, and Canada. And in the opening match for the Mexican national team, which after the draw ended up as the top seed in Group A, Mexico ended up beating South Africa 2-0 in the first match of the group. Let's remember that in this new edition of the World Cup, with this new format, even the third place teams get in. That's why today's win for Mexico practically puts them in, at least on the verge of what could be a possible round of 16 match and also a possible qualification as a third place team. Obviously, there's still a way to go, but the step Mexico took today is very important. The step Mexico just took today is very important. It is true that Mexico will have an advantage, and that's that they are playing as the home team, at least for the first few matches. At least the matches that the Mexican national team will be playing in the group stage will be played as the home team. In fact, in this season, they have done it during the season. They have done it in the season. But is it true that this advantage that Mexico has is really an advantage? At least they were able to take advantage of it in the first match. A first match that obviously has a different feel because it's the opening match of the World Cup. Because if there's one of the 3 matches to watch in a World Cup, usually the first one is the most attractive because of the anticipation, because of all the build-up leading up to it. The first one is usually the most attractive because of the expectation, because of all the waiting behind it. Afterwards, of course, depending on the group, there are more and less attractive matches. I think, for example, the matches that Mexico can play, out of the 3 matches, some are more attractive and some are less. I think, for example, the match that both Mexico and South Korea can play will be among the less attractive matches. Well, in this World Cup, it's not just about Mexico. The United States is also a host nation. And what about the matches themselves? Opening against South Africa also has a nostalgic touch. It has a touch of curiosity, if you want to call it that. The truth is that the Mexican team has won and they've done well. The truth is there's also another thing that needs to be mentioned that we also need to analyze, and we're going to start talking about the Mexican victory. I appreciate your comment and invite you to subscribe to the Falso 9 TV channel in Bicuando. Please support our reactions, both upcoming and those we've made throughout the year. Not only in relation to what the World Cup will be like for the Mexican national team, but also, of course, in relation to everything that 2026 is bringing for Falso 9 TV. Now, if we continue with what this victory of the Mexican national team has been, this team that ends up winning the match well against, at least for me, a very weak South Africa. I was expecting something else. I was expecting more resistance. I think that even though Mexico was the favorite before this match, in the lead up to the World Cup, they were the favorite in this game. Because out of the 3 matches that the Mexican national team has to play, this was, if you will, the most accessible, if you will, the easiest one. Because at the last World Cup, South Korea made a strong impression. Because we know that the Czech Republic has elite players. They have players in Europe because they just had a good Euro Cup. Not only the recent Euro Cup, but also the previous one, they also had a pretty decent performance in the 2021 Euro Cup because they have players like their former ones, like Patrick Schick. But that's also why in Mexico, everyone was focusing all their attention on this match. Because a victory today also gives Mexico some room to stumble. Obviously, the ideal for the Mexican national team would be not to lose now, in case they do lose, because that's also a possibility. Is it possible to lose one of the two, either the match against South Korea or the match against the Republic? The cushion of having won this match is the cushion of having won this match. That's why the victory of the Mexican national team ends up being very important. Earlier, we mentioned a weak South African team whose standout player has been their goalkeeper, who has ended up. Also, the match with 9 players, referee Wilson Zampayo taking center stage, taking a bit of the spotlight in this first match. I think with some red cards, at least in my opinion, I think they ended up they ended up being very cheap. The red cards ended up being very cheap because they really weren't fouls, except for the first one, because the first one was correctly called since Gutierrez was going one-on-one with the goalkeeper, with the match still 1-0 in favor of Mexico. The Mexican team still hadn't increased their lead on the scoreboard. The other two red cards seem at least debatable to me. And in this World Cup, it's not the same to talk about a sending off. Whether it's right or wrong in a World Cup is different than in any other tournament like the Champions League. You have two knockout matches in the Champions League. You have a group stage before the knockouts. Here it's three matches. And those three matches either put you in the final stage or leave you out. There's no margin. In fact, if we only consider the group stage, a sending off sidelines you from 30% of the competition for that reason. And also, taking into account that at least for Mexico's side, it's Montes who ends up being sent off. And honestly, it makes you think about what they're going to do. I think they were very strict with the cards in this first match. And isn't the Mexican national team going to be without Montes for their second game in this group? Which honestly ends up being a very significant loss. Because for Chicaxco, having to face the second match against South Korea without Montes, and it's a significant loss. It's a significant loss. As for the match, honestly, it's been almost a monologue from Mexico. Pretty much. South Africa didn't even give Mexico a scare. It never really troubled them. The truth is, we saw a South African team, an African team today that was very, very weak. And that's even though the Mexican team came in with some doubts. The Mexican national team entered this match with doubts. They didn't arrive at their best. Maybe, as one would think, what we saw from Mexico today actually turned out to be better. Maybe even better than almost the entire World Cup cycle. Because throughout the whole journey, Mexico didn't have qualifiers since they were the host. Obviously, there was a lot of talk that after the World Cup in Qatar na cataract, it wasn't clear how beneficial this was going to be. Well, the truth is that Mexico, despite the doubts, despite leaving a bit of a question mark, because by not having qualifiers, only friendlies for the players, maybe that feeling remains of whether I'm ready or not. Well, that's what happened to Brazil. Brazil arrived at the 2014 World Cup as Confederations Cup champions. Until the Confederations Cup, they faced no competition since they skipped the qualifiers. They won the Confederations Cup, and then in the World Cup, they ended up hitting a wall against Germany. Well, let's see how it goes with Mexico, how they end up handling being the host. This is a very important for me in this group, and Mexico could benefit from it. We'll see if they qualify first. The truth is that in this first match, it's been more than satisfactory for Mexico. The truth is that the match was set up for Mexico to end up winning by a landslide, to really show off, to finish with a 3 or 4-0 against their African opponent. But the truth is that in this match, the South African goalkeeper Williams ended up being one of the standout players. Now, on Mexico's side, I'm not so comfortable because the truth is that the few times the South African team has gotten even a little close to the Mexican goal, and the truth is that it ended up making things uncomfortable. Not in the sense that the goalkeeper didn't look confident. South Africa didn't have any clear goal opportunities. In that sense, they didn't really trouble Mexico. Ahora, when they got close to the final third, the truth is that Rango left some doubts. I'm not sure if the goalkeeper will change later in this World Cup. I understand that Rangel is currently a step above the rest, but now maybe for what's coming next, I wouldn't be surprised if Aguirre chooses Ochoa for his experience, though I thought Rangel should have been the goalkeeper in the trial. But while these are things to keep in mind for what's coming, the truth is that Mexico has won. Great game from Quiñones. It's important that Quiñones scored and that Raul Jimenez scored. A player who had underperformed in World Cups, particularly due to his poor showing in Qatar. But the truth is that we saw a solid Mexican team. A Mexican team that set up with two lines of four defenders, four midfielders. Simple. A straightforward Mexican team that tried not to complicate things. I think that one of their greatest strengths is recognizing their limitations and knowing how to approach the matches. Today we also saw a team handle the ball well. That's also part of the DNA of Mexican soccer. It's part of the DNA of this national team historically, trying to control the ball. Well, today they did it well. Obviously, playing at the Azteca gives them an extra edge to win the match. But Mexico has won 2-0 against South Africa in their World Cup debut. A great way to start the World Cup. A great way to start as well for Mexico for their journey in this group, which I believe is one of the favorites to win this group, especially depending on what happens today between South Korea and the Czech Republic. Girl, in fact, I would even dare to say that if the Czech Republic and South Korea tie today, Mexico will already have one foot in. Already as the leader of this group. We'll see, anything can happen. This is football. It's obviously the dynamic of the unexpected. But the truth is that today Mexico has taken a big step forward, not only to qualify for the next round of the World Cup, but also to take the group. I invite you to leave your like. I invite you to leave your comment. I invite you to subscribe, and we will meet again next time with much more content about this World Cup that is being played in Mexico, the United States, and Canada.